Today I'm speaking with Professor Craig Hazen tonight at Christian Thinkers Society, and this is a true honor for myself and for all of our viewers. Professor Craig Hazen is a titan of apologetics. He's a titan in the world of Christian thought and life, and he's a true hero in what's happening right now in the world of Christian apologetics and Christian philosophy. And I want to give you, Professor Hazen, an appropriate introduction. Thanks for stopping by and answering some questions for myself and for our viewers. Professor Hazen is the professor of comparative religion and Christian apologetics at Biola University, and he's the director of the Christian Apologetics program, which is now world-renowned. He's the editor of the wonderful philosophy journal Philosophia Christi. He's authored and contributed to a range of scholarly works, To Everyone an Answer, the wonderful Apologetics study Bible that has sold hundreds of thousands of copies, and this breakout novel that I highly recommend, 5 Sacred Crossings. Hazen has his PhD in religious studies, a degree in biological sciences, and he studied in international human rights in Strasbourg, France. At Biola, he was named the winner of the Fisher Award of Faculty Excellence, the highest award among their faculty. Professor Hazen has lectured all over North America, Europe, on the evidence for the resurrection, religion and science, and Christianity among world religions. He's also lectured at the White House and Capitol Hill, and there's a lot of YouTube videos out there on the internet. You can watch those for yourself. He's done a fabulous job at that. He's also a former co-host of a national radio talk show program and regularly on-camera expert for broadcast television, answering the questions that our culture's asking, apologetics. He and his wife, Karen, they live in Southern California with their 4 children when he's not all over the world engaging in apologetics. So, Professor Hazen, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jeremiah. And by the way, my kids are not the least bit impressed at any of that.
Well, Professor Hazen, as we've just seen, you're leading one of the finest educational institutions in America. And if you haven't yet, I want to remind our audience to Google the Biola University. You have more students, correct me if I'm wrong, you have more students studying philosophy at the graduate level than any other institution in the world. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I was actually the guy who first researched that notion. Really? I thought, wow, we have an awful lot of people studying philosophy at the graduate level. I wonder what school has more. And I prowled around, and the only contenders were Oxford and University of Toronto. Now, I didn't check all the schools in Bangladesh, but but once I was done, it turned out Biola had more students studying philosophy at the grad level than any other I could find.
Wow. Well, that's just a testimony. We're going to get into your vision, how you launched that. But I want to back up if I can, because, God uses people. I mean, the apologetics program at Biola didn't fall out of heaven. And God has really used you, Professor Hazen. And now you are modeling and molding thousands of people of all ages, really. But how did you come to faith in Christ? When did you hear the gospel? Did you grow up in a Christian home? Can you give, for our viewers, a sense of your religious background?
Yeah, I didn't grow up in a Christian home, and I was, as a high school kid, I was your basic armchair agnostic or atheist, and had lame-brained arguments against God's existence. It just seemed to me that religion was just about blind faith, and I'd rather be scientific than blind leaping into some religious abyss. But some cute chick invites me to a church, and there's a guy named Greg Laurie preaching. Now, he's one of the finest evangelists on the planet. He gives a stirring message. The Lord uses it dramatically to just penetrate my heart. I had no idea what was going on, but I decided to go forward at an altar call. I still had all my questions. And I remember they took me into a back room, and I thought, oh, this is where the brainwashing takes place, And it's true, there were a whole bunch of us new believers back there, and for each group of us, there was a counselor. Well, it wasn't long before it was me and all the counselors, and I was firing questions at them, and God bless them, they did their best. They didn't do a super job answering the questions, but they didn't give up on me. They knew where to point me, go listen to this radio program and listen to this tape and CD and watch this program and read these books, and they followed up with me. And the strange thing happened over the weeks after that. There was a tight cord tied between my heart that I'd felt something happening to that night, and my mind. I just couldn't escape it. This thing was probably true. And God just used that to seal the deal. I was not going to be one of those seeds that was on the rocky ground. There was some real fertile soil there because some bright Christians thought it was important that I get my questions answered.
Wow, that's amazing. I want to hear more about then how God took you into apologetics. I want to skip around a little bit because I've had some questions emailed in from our audience. I'm burdened about the United States. Being in Oxford the last couple years studying, I read this book by Colin Brown, The Death of Christian Britain. And I'm really kind of waking up to things that I see in America.
One of the most important books I've read in the last, decade or so.
Yeah, and I'm not one of these fatalists. I see good things in the United States, the great things that you're doing and guys like you. But I also look at some of the statistics that I'm seeing. And, recently I shared here at Christian Thinker Society a report by the Institute for Jewish and Community Research reveals that American faculty, and I want to quote this, overwhelmingly asserted their desire to see Christian influence lessened on the campus, while being far less critical and even supportive of increasing Muslim religious influence. Professor Hazen, what has happened to the American faculty? Why the hostility towards Christianity and evangelical Christianity?
Yeah, when I was in grad school, I remember we'd have big faculty and grad student gatherings. And I went to a pretty big graduate program in religious studies at a very secular school, University of California. And I remember the department chair saying something like, "Oh my goodness, we've got to pay more attention to all these big religious issues because I think we all would agree that the greatest evil on the face of the earth is really from conservative religious believers, that was really the greatest threat on earth." And you can imagine why they would go that direction. But it dawned on me after studying with these folks for a while, the reason they could say something like that was because they really were convinced that religion had no real knowledge base. There's no real knowledge base in any kind of religious claims. If we claim that Jesus came back from the dead, that's just something we feel inside, something we have through blind faith. But if there's no knowledge content, and that's where scholars really do their best work, when there's knowledge content, right? They compete in that sphere and try to make the best argument based on what they think the knowledge is. If there's no knowledge there, it all boils down, in their mind, to power. And so Christians tend to hold the power in terms of Western civilization and have for years. And so they're just looking to Christians to try to dilute their power. Why? Because it's not about whether Christianity is true or not. Nobody can possibly know that because there's no knowledge content. So it ends up being just a power struggle, and they want to dilute sort of white, European, male, Protestant power.
And in my opinion, these are why institutions, that God's raising up institutions like Biola University and what you are doing. This is getting back the tide of what we're seeing, that Christians are diluted, that we're some kind of force of evil. That's why I love what you're doing at Biola, because you're really seeing that we can have cogent arguments without coming across argumentative, great defenses for the faith without being defensive. I want to just drill down a little bit, though. National polls in the United States show a steady rise in the number of people declaring no religion. Now, I know you're very familiar with these, but just for the benefit of our audience, more Americans now profess no religion, not atheism, just no religion when asked about their religious affiliation than at any other time, really, in the history of our country. More people than the total number of Episcopalians, Presbyterians, Methodists, and Lutherans combined. That number's doubled since the 1990, and of course we know in Europe the percentage is far greater. But strangely, and this is what I want to hit on, 2/3 of the respondents who claim no religion affection still believe that God exists. So in your experience as an apologist and as a scholar, do you see this as an opportunity to reach out? And if so, what are some practical ways for our listeners to engage with those who claim, hey, I don't have any religion, but I still believe in God?
Yeah, it's a strange situation, but that's important. I was going to say the response "no religion" in a poll question doesn't necessarily mean no spirituality or no belief in God. For decades now, good sociologists of religion who study these kinds of questions have told us that Americans tend to be believers, and that trend is still rather strong. We tend to be believers but not belongers. We're believers but not belongers. And we don't want to identify anything with religion. Religion is simply, in modern vocabulary, a system of practice based on no knowledge. It's all about knowledge. There's no knowledge grounding religion. I would rather be a scientist, you see, or a scholar, somebody who deals with evidence on a regular basis, somebody who can go to a crime scene and investigate properly because I believe that evidence can tell a story, or I can do my good work in a court of law or in an archaeological dig because I understand there's a knowledge base. When people hear religion, they automatically think no knowledge, that it's just about inner feelings or blind faith. And wouldn't you rather be a scientific person than a religious person? And hence we get the answer, no knowledge, even though people might still believe in God. I think Americans are still pretty well fixed into a tradition of deep spiritual experience. We're not going to give that up easily. It's ingrained in us, but we've been interpreting it in new ways.
And don't you think then that the ultimate goal of the apologist is to really turn back the Enlightenment, to bring back religion as a source of knowledge?
Yes, and if we could do it without the word religion, so much the better.
Yeah.
It's a good word and it's very useful, but boy, it connotes the wrong thing. When you mention it, something wrong pops into the mind of the person hearing it. You know, I like the idea of studying religion. You know, Buddhists make truth claims. Muslims make truth claims. Christians and Jews make truth claims. If they do, it seems to me that a good scientific person who's approaching religion can actually try to sort out those truth claims and make sense of them.
Again, I'm speaking with Professor Craig Hazen from Biola University. I encourage you to Google Biola University and check out Craig Hazen. Professor Hazen, you're gifted as an author and a communicator, as we're seeing. In a recent book, 5 Sacred Crosses, you write about what distinguishes Christianity from the other world religions. Can you share some of those distinguishing factors with our audience?
Yeah, you know, I had a chance to study all of the great world religious traditions from stem to stern in a PhD program in religious studies, and you know, so you get to study Islam and Buddhism and Hinduism and Native American traditions and Mormonism and you name it. And I got a chance to compare Christianity to all these movements, and I discovered something. Christianity is a strange bird. It really doesn't fit that package we call religion very well at all. You try to stuff it into the religion can, and it just doesn't fit. Why? Well, for several reasons. In fact, there's 5 reasons I could give. I don't know if I'll cover them all with you, but in the book I cover them all. 5 sacred crossings. And there's 5 things that set Christianity apart. And in this book I wrote, it's a novel. And I actually show how Christianity is different in the course of telling a fast-paced, page-turning story. And I'm delighted that people are reading it. You know, they don't read the stuffy things that I write, but they like this novel, and I'm glad. But here are a few things. Number 1, Christianity is testable. It's testable. You can offer evidence for it. You can offer evidence against it, and the evidence means something. Right? You know, Zen Buddhists don't do that. Zen Buddhists don't care about the evidence. They don't care if the Buddha actually existed or if he taught the famous, sermon at the deer park in Benares. It doesn't matter. You know, what matters is the inner experience of the Buddhist. But in Christianity, it does matter. The Apostle Paul said something radical in 1 Corinthians 15. If Jesus didn't come back from the dead, our faith is worthless. Our faith is useless. It's empty. Oh my goodness. That is a radical statement in the whole history of religious statements. That if this historical event did not really happen, our faith is worthless. That's dramatic. That makes Christianity testable because you can investigate and see whether the evidence stacks up in favor of the resurrection of Jesus or not. So that's number 1. The second reason that Christianity is set apart from the other great traditions is that in Christianity, you are saved by grace. It's a free gift from God. Now, that really is rather dramatic in the whole spectrum of world religions. You find a little bit of freedom here and there, but you don't find it like it's presented in Ephesians chapter 2, where there's not a single work you're going to do that's going to please God. It is a free gift. That is an astonishing thing. I could give you a number of other facts, like Christianity gets a tremendous worldview fit. In Christianity, we present a picture of the world that matches the way the world really is. Now, that would take me a little while to flesh that out because a worldview basically encompasses every fact in the world. But let me give you the one I end the book with, and that is Christianity is set apart from the other religious traditions because it has Jesus at the center. And some people immediately think, wait, that's stacking the deck. Well, it's not really, because everybody wants a piece of Jesus, right? Islam wants to capture Jesus. Buddhism does. Hinduism does. The Mormons do. Everybody wants Jesus as a key figure in their movement, but Jesus was the center point of only one movement, and that is Christianity. And so he is hands down the universal religious figure, and Christianity has him placed right at the center. So there's a few things that set Christianity apart. I cover 5 of them in the book, 5 sacred crossings.
And I encourage all of our audience to look at those. Professor Hazen, that book is excellent. I've read it, and I've used it several times.
Oh, good.
I encourage our Christians who are listening, get that book and read it, and then use that as an evangelism tool. Use that in your Bible studies. Give it to your pastors, because it's so readable and it's so usable, and I appreciate you, Professor Hazen, writing that in a way that we can all use it. So thank you for that. I just want to ask you another practical question for our audience. When engaging in apologetics, the old adage, win an argument, lose a soul, how do we keep from coming across argumentative and defensive? Because really, the stronger our arguments are for the faith, we should be more relaxed, we should be more chilled, more cool. What are some just neat things you can exhort our audience with when engaging in apologetics, wherever our audience may be tonight?
Well, I've got to re-emphasize what you just said, because it's really important. Some people think, well, once you get filled with knowledge, you get all puffy and arrogant, and nobody will want to deal with you, and you'll just you'll make a mess of things for Jesus. That's not the case. When you actually gain knowledge, it doesn't help to have a little wisdom tossed in with it. But as you gain knowledge, you actually relax more. You don't feel like you have to give the one answer fast before you forget it. You can relax, and just that relaxed posture helps people to have a better, real spiritual dialogue with you. There are a couple of keys, though. One is to make sure you listen. Listening is the most important part, and we don't have much time usually. But if you do have time, you're on a 4-hour leg of an airplane trip, you're on a train, you're sitting at a PTA meeting, whispering to the person next to you. If you have some time, listen to what they have to say. This has been one of the most important techniques I've seen. It's amazing how not only do they think you care about them, which you're displaying through your careful listening, but you're also earning the right to say something yourself. Because at some point they go, oh my goodness, I've spent the whole time talking. What do you think about all this? And then you can just say a couple of comments, and they will penetrate much more deeply than if you were sprinkling in your comments the whole time. So that can be very effective. I've used that in some very strange situations to great effect.
I think that can be good in our marriages, too.
That's true.
You're the editor of, I love getting the Philosophia Christi journal. Looking forward to the EPS conference in a few weeks. Can you tell our audience, in my opinion, and many scholars' opinion, believe that it's really the finest journal of the philosophy of religion on the planet. Can you tell our audience about the journal? You're the editor, how they can subscribe to it, the website, and just some of the neat facets of why one would want to check it out.
Yeah, now it is a fairly highfalutin journal. It uses vocabulary of the professional philosopher, and it has a lot of articles dealing with philosophy. But if you really want to keep tabs on what cutting-edge atheists are saying and how cutting-edge theists and believing Jesus followers who have requisite degrees in philosophy are arguing against those ideas. This is a tremendous journal to get a hold of. It comes out twice a year, and it's rather meaty. But I make sure, as the editor, there's always a couple of wonderful articles or pieces that deal with apologetics, a little closer to street level work that interests a much broader audience. Not only that, we've always got a wonderful collection of book reviews, so you can sort of keep up with what's going on in the field. Whether it's philosophy, apologetics, theology, or biblical studies, we try to cover some of all of it, all with a hope of pushing forward the kingdom of God at the highest levels of academic discourse. I think we need to make inroads into those scholarly circles, and it's rather shocking when it happens. Jeremiah, I'm sure you know William Lane Craig very well. You've probably had him on one of these little broadcasts. But he's about to go to Great Britain to make a nuisance of himself for Jesus. But that's what can happen when you do first-rank work. Honestly, the atheists in Britain don't know what to do with this man. He cleans their clocks in a very loving way in debates, and they're running scared. They don't know what to do with the man. I mean, he completely blows apart the stereotypes people have of Christians being sort of, ignorant knuckle draggers. Here's a brilliant man with a couple of PhDs who's debated the finest minds in the world and generally wins.
Wow. And Professor Craig was on here recently, and I think it's just amazing. Nobody wants to face him. He's just, it's amazing. And a lot of our friends and our viewers who are watching in Oxford are looking forward to seeing him at the Sheldonian soon in Oxford. I want to just talk about this rise of new atheism. It's just made it all the important as Christians that we're able to give a cogent, intellectually informed account of what we as Christians believe, and to do it in a public sphere, as we've been talking about this whole broadcast. And I take great delight that I think this is happening thanks to individuals like yourself and institutions like Biola University and the Apologetics program. I wanted you to take the remaining minutes of our program, if you're willing, and just talk about the fact that before you came to Biola, there was no apologetics program. In the UK, it's sad because other than the Oxford Center of Christian Apologetics, which is phenomenal, but it's, I think, a semester only. There's really no graduate degree available in the UK. I mean, you're really pioneering something that I think other institutions are already modeling. How did you have this vision to start this MA in apologetics? And can you just talk about the excitement and the growth? I mean, this has really taken off, and I'm sure that was a huge step of faith for you.
Yeah, it was. I remember when I first started the program at Biola, people were asking me, well, wait a minute, what are people going to do with a Master of Arts degree in Christian apologetics? I said, you know what, I'm not sure, but let's leave that up to them. And it's amazing what they've done. We've got people who've done this graduate degree, and I hope some of your audience pays attention to this, because some of them might be doing the same thing. And they are writers, they are radio broadcasters, they are professors and pastors and missionaries and campus evangelists. And really, they're stunning people, because people don't expect Christians to be well-trained in terms of philosophy and history and cultural studies, and really prepared to give an answer. Really prepared to give an answer, as Peter commands us in 1 Peter 3:15. So I'm thrilled to see what they've done with it. So we have this Master of Arts degree at Biola, and by the way, it can be done on campus, but it can also be done through a first-rank distance learning program. This isn't, the kind of thing you imagine where you sit at a computer. This is robust, interactive learning, across the country if you need to be placed there. But you also come to campus for 2 weeks one summer, then 2 weeks the following summer for these intensive get-togethers with faculty and other students. It is more fun than we should be allowed to have. We have trouble getting our graduate students to go back home after our 2 weeks together during the summer. It is just rich and stimulating, and people are growing in the Lord and catching whole new visions for what their lives and ministries can be about. And the Lord has not been slow. Can you hear the train going by? It's like being in a Lucy episode. And so our students are doing tremendous work with this. We also have a Master of Arts degree in Science and Religion. And this has become wildly popular. There are so many Christian scientists out there in engineering and nursing and medical science and chemistry and archaeology, you name it. And we have these people coming together for this master's degree program in science and religion and going back into their workplace with this unique degree and making a tremendous impact. If you don't have the requisite degrees to get into a master's program, or if you already have 2 PhDs and you don't want to do another graduate degree, we have a certificate program in Christian apologetics, which is open to everybody and can be done at a distance. We mail you this wonderful box of learning, and you just dig in and feast on first-rank stimulating lectures and study materials. So there's a lot of education to be had out there, and we've certainly got a big jolt of it here at Biola for you.
And one thing I want to encourage our audience, we have audience 12 years of age all the way to 80, and we have a lot of ladies and gentlemen who are getting older. And can you just encourage, I'm sure a lot of your students are not that typical 18 to 24
That's
years
right.
of age. So can you take a moment and encourage those who perhaps want to go back and sharpen to take time to do that at Biola?
Yes, we have homeschoolers, we have junior hires and high schoolers doing our certificate program. And you need a bachelor's degree to be able to get into a master's program, but we've got people of all ages, retired people. I think maybe the oldest person in our program is in her 80s. And the youngest is, fresh out of college, maybe 22, 23. So there's a huge range, and a lot of mid-career professional people doing this degree. Everybody from internet executives to full-time physicians and airline pilots. They're all doing this degree and loving it, and they're serving in their churches in dramatic new ways.
I'm really encouraging a lot of our viewers from the UK as well to latch onto this, because this is something that we can use even in the UK. I want to close with one final question. I read a book, and I don't know if you've seen it. I don't know how well read it is, but Kendra Dean, this Princeton Theological Seminary professor, wrote this book entitled Almost Christian. And it gives this compelling evidence that the faith of American teenagers is essentially remarkably shallow, and is really a reflection of the Christianity that we see in adults. And what we're really seeing in the local churches today, just in effect shallow teaching and shallow belief. Young people don't know why Christianity is true anymore, Professor Hazen, and I just want to thank God for what you're doing. Reading that book was just another eye-opener for me about how important it is that we continue to raise up a generation of people who know what they believe and why they believe it. And I mean, I know apologetics has always been important, but is it as important now more than any other time, in your opinion? Final question.
Yeah, I actually give a lecture where this might be the most important time for apologetics, being able to give reasons for faith, since the initial foray of Christianity into the Mediterranean world, the great movement of the 2nd century apologists. In order to make its way through this culture that was firmly set against Christian ideas, some bright, articulate, and courageous people had to make the case at the highest levels that Christianity was true.
That's right. Well, my guest today has been Professor Craig Hazen, the founder and director of the MA in Apologetics at Biola University. Professor Hazen, thank you so much for stopping by Christian Thinkers Society. We hope that you'll come here. We hope you'll join us at our conferences, not only here in Kansas City, but throughout the country, so our audiences can meet you in person as well. Thanks for taking the time to be here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Jeremiah.